Okay. Thank you all for coming. So let me see if I can set the stage. I can tell you one big difference right now.
Yeah,
Can you hear it okay? This way. I can tell you one. All the panelists were up all night last night. This crew was trying to remember what they did in college. And this crew's trying to forget what they did last night. So we have Saturday classes, no Saturday classes. We've got the Y court, and we got the pit. We got Woolen Gym, and we got the Smith Center. We got La Pizza, and we got 100 different places to buy pizza. We got the Rathskeller and Spankies. You get the idea. But we also have khakis and mattress shirts. And we've got, what's a mattress shirt, right? So today we're going to try to study the contrast between your experience and what is going on now. I'm going to ask the panelists a series of questions, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Now, the disadvantage we have is that we have only one mic, and we're going to make it work. So I want the panelists individually to introduce yourselves. If you can remember your major, say your major. And we'd like to know your hometown, all of you, when you entered, and when you're graduating, where your hometown will be. Okay?
Good morning. My name is Alexis White. I'm a senior, and my major is, let's see if I can remember, journalism and public relations and communication studies. My hometown, I'm originally from Cary, North Carolina, so right down the road. And I will be traveling further down south next year. I'll be living in Mississippi.
Is this mic going to work?
This
might be better off without it. That's not going to help you.
What we got going on is some interference, so he's going to try the live, which might, you'll have to move. It's just that little microphone. Try that. We're hoping to interfere.
I think we can all talk louder. The problem, you don't think so.
Right.
Well, the problem is they want to record.
Try the lavalier.
Okay.
It's not on. It's not on.
Check 1, 2, check.
There you go. There you go.
All right. So my name is Katrina Hoppridge. I'm from Burtonsville, Maryland. I majored in public policy and Hispanic linguistics with a minor in politics, philosophy, and economics. That's one minor, not three. And after this, my hometown will still be Chapel Hill.
My name is Sal, like the direction. I am from Murfreesboro, North Carolina. I'm a political science, a major with a minor in social and economic justice, and my hometown is also still going to be Chapel Hill after this. I'm actually working at the General Administration Building. I'm one of the UNC System Presidential Fellows.
Well, my name is Martin Lancaster, and my hometown still is, though I sleep somewhere else, Goldsboro. And Alice and I recently retired and moved to Falls Church, Virginia to be near our grandchildren. And I didn't have a major. I went to law school after my junior year and got just a plain old Bachelor of Arts degree after the first year in law school with no major. I took a prescribed curriculum that was available then. It's no longer available. So I'm a strange bird with no major.
I'm Mary Evans Layton. I'm one of those out-of-state people. I came from Winchester, Virginia as a transfer student. My husband and I met in Chapel Hill, and we live in Gastonia, and I was an English major.
And I'm Bill White. I live in Chapel Hill now, and have since 1964. I was married to my wife in 1964. So it's been a long ride for us, I'll tell you. We had our 50th wedding reunion, wedding celebration back in September. So it was great. I majored in business, and I was originally from Greensboro.
My name is Suzanne Landis Simpson. I entered Carolina as a transfer student. I was a major, education major. My husband and I live in Chapel Hill. We were gone for many years. We came back on the faculty, and so we've lived in Chapel Hill since 1974.
So Martin and Mary, how did you get here? Who came with you? And what was the move-in like? I mean, was it organized? Was it structured? Did you just pull your car up and move into a dorm?
Well, my moving was very different from our daughters who both came here, which was a major event, akin to the invasion of Normandy. Because it included a loft and a microwave and a television and recliner. And you got the picture. When I moved in, I was the first person to go to college, and it was a big event in my family. I was very pleased that my father had bought a new car just weeks before we came because I was so embarrassed by our old Oldsmobile. And he bought a new Pontiac, and I had two younger sisters, and all of us came. And I had two suitcases and a little portable typewriter in a carrier, and they went in the trunk. And so it was not very much at all to move in. I moved into Stacy dorm, and we had lunch at the Monogram Club, which was right behind Stacy. And I got rid of them as soon as I could because my mother and sisters were crying so bad that I really wanted them to leave and for me to get on with the experience.
Well, my first moving in experience was at the University of Richmond. So we got over all of that 2 years before I came to Chapel Hill. But we drove, my parents and I and my little brother, and a chest of drawers, were all in a pink and white American Rambler. I don't know whether to be glad or sad.
We had a pink and white Plymouth station wagon.
So really, we really are related here in some strange way. And we had to drive 400 miles with all of that stuff, and came to Alderman dorm, and I think they just deposited me and left, which was good because I started meeting people in my dorm, young women, and I knew my roommate who came with me from University of Richmond, and one other girl, and a couple guys, which was the best part, I have to say. You know, you didn't ask this question, but I do want to get in the point that there were 6 young men to every female person. I know, I think it's short.
Sal, you and Katrina, what's moving like now?
Cool. Move-in is very organized. You get told based on your last name, I believe, what date you're going to come in. There are 3 move-in dates, and then specifically what time. So I got told I was going to be able to park my car just outside my dorm from 12 to 12:30, unload all the stuff, and then you just kind of leave it on the sidewalk, go park your car far away, because it's Carolina and there's no parking. And then you come back and you move all your stuff into your dorm. But I think sort of the big family event, it was very similar for me. You know, my family made a whole day of it. We came up here, moved in, went to dinner. I think one other interesting thing that might not have happened 50 years ago is the Walmart trip for whatever it is that you should have brought that you either didn't know to bring or didn't think to bring. Yeah. You don't want to go to Walmart in New Hope Commons on move-in weekend because there will be nothing there.
I had a special move-in experience. I did a 3-day kind of service event before all the other students moved in my first year, so I got to come early and have kind of the space to myself. I didn't have to fight for parking. My family came down in a 12-passenger van with all the seats out and all of my stuff, my futon, all my clothes. It was absolutely madness. But I was fortunate enough to have some members of the band hanging around because that was when the band students were moving in also. So we had 3 piccolo players help carry all my stuff up the stairs into Craig's dorm, which was a lot of fun. And we did the same trip, and my dad was a handyman and hung up everything in the room. So it's an experience.
Thank you. Okay. So Suzanne and Bill. Now, I know, Suzanne, I know you're from Chapel Hill, so it's going to be a little different, so maybe you'll think about your friends a little bit. So how often did you go home? How did you go home? How often and how did you communicate with your parents?
It's hard to remember if we even communicated with their parents. I was also in Alumni dorm. There was a telephone, I think, at each end of the hall, and you had to wait your turn to get to the telephone if you were going to call home. I don't think I went home until Thanksgiving vacation. I don't even remember that we had fall break. We had fall break? I don't think we had fall break. So Thanksgiving was the first time that you would go home.
But you lived in Chapel Hill?
I lived in Chapel Hill, but, you know, Chapel Hill, there was really no reason to go home because everything. So, yeah, so we communicated by the one telephone that was on the hall. Usually, it would probably be on a Sunday evening. There was usually a line to use the telephone. And, let's see. That was about it, but you were far away, so.
Well, not too far, 50 miles. As I mentioned, my future wife,
Bill.
I'm sorry, my future wife came up to Carolina with me when I was dropped off, which I'll have to agree with everything y'all said. The way I got to and from was with this. I did that multiple times because I was dating Becky, and so just about every weekend I would come home thumbing, I'd go back thumbing. One thing about thumbing was back then, of course, it was very safe. It was very nice. But one guy picked me up. He was our dorm advisor. Picked me up, and there were a couple other guys in the car, and we were on 87. And a car came over the top of the hill, and we had to go into the ditch. Well, that was a scary moment, but it was a Volkswagen. So we all got out of the vehicle, back up, so it worked out just fine. So the only other time that I didn't go home was when we had big events for the ladies from Greensboro. And my wife, my future wife, would come every time. So it was great.
So Bill, did you call long distance and talk to your parents?
Oh, are you kidding? My dad was actually, well, he was almost as tight as I am. So he did not want me to call. My mother wanted me to call, but he wouldn't let her call or me call. So it was a real experience for us to get on the phone. It was only an emergency would we do that. And probably like you, I guess, probably the first time I went home for an overnight would be because of either dating Becky or Thanksgiving.
I wanted to say something about the first time I went home, my mother insisted I take the bus. And the bus stopped at every cow trail between here and Goldsboro. And it took like 3 or 4 hours. I mean, forever. And when I got home, I said, if you ever want me to come home again, I'm either going to hitchhike or you're going to come for me. And so I did most of this too. And like you say, I never had an unpleasant experience hitchhiking. And
do y'all remember that you would, if you were going east, you would go down just past the Institute of Government, stand on the road with probably a tie on,
oh, yeah.
and people who were headed east would drive that way and offer rides.
Yeah.
Let's get
One thing that with everybody hitchhiking, we had a North Carolina decal on our bag.
Right.
And that
So you hitchhike, huh?
I play every weekend with my decal. So I'm from Cary, North Carolina, and my mom was so excited when I decided to go to Chapel Hill as opposed to any of the out-of-state schools I was looking at, because she thought that meant that I was going to come home all the time. Unfortunately, I do not go home, and I have not gone home too much in my 4 years. Freshman year, you're not allowed to have a car on campus, and we don't thumb home, so the only way for me to get home was to find an older student to give me a ride home, or my mom to come to Chapel Hill, or my grandma and my dad, which they do not mind doing, and they did not mind doing. As far as how often I would call them, my freshman year, my mom tells me I did not do a good job of calling her enough, so she would call me a lot. Also, you guys, does anyone FaceTime? Okay, so you can FaceTime. Yeah. FaceTime has been something that my parents use, so they'll call me and they'll FaceTime me to be able to see what I'm doing. Facebook, sometimes when I was studying freshman year, my mom would message me on Facebook, and she would be able to see what I was doing with my life. So I wouldn't say that I went home a lot, but we definitely stayed in contact. She made sure she got a hold of me.
Trina, do you want to add anything to that?
My time that I talk to my parents is whenever I'll be walking places across campus, especially at night. If I was heading from a meeting to my dorm or something like that, I would call my dad really quickly. The hardest part is getting them off the phone. I would get home and need to start homework or whatever, and I would have spent 30 minutes telling one of them all about my day, and suddenly they say, "Oh, well, okay, so do you want to talk to your mom?" "Well, can you just fill her in for me?" And I'm just going to say all the same things. So we had to we would have to set up a time to put the phone on speaker, go through all of the time together, and then move on. But yeah, I talk to my parents a lot. I rarely go home, though, back to Maryland. It's a different trek.
Okay. So Mary and Mark, tell us what football weekends were like. Who did you go with? What did you wear? What was it like on a football Saturday?
Well, I went with a cute guy whose name was David Layton, and he always made sure that we had our tickets to everything, so I didn't have to do that. We wore little heels and little suits and little purses and, and sometimes little hats. We were so beyond belief cute. And to add to that, I was talking with somebody earlier, women at Carolina did not wear jeans or shorts or, we wore little dresses and, Capizio flats and all that stuff. And I look at the young women on campus and think today how smart they are and how comfortable they are.
Well, of course, for football games, you dressed up. You had to wear that new sport coat that you bought, even though it was 90 degrees and it was wool. And the guys wore ties, and she's already described how the women came dressed. And you had to have a date. I never did this, but I have friends who, if they didn't have a date by Thursday night, would just call Alderman or one of the dorms and say, anybody want to go to the game Saturday? But you had to have a date, and you did get some sort of little pass, but you traded it in at the gate, the south gate, whatever gate it was, the Keenan. And so you still had to stand in line a second time in order to know where you were sitting. And you wanted to sit in the card section because they were the closest to the 50-yard line. But it was a big deal, and you dressed up. I don't think I ever went to a game without at least wearing a sport coat.
Suzanne, do you want to add to that, or is that?
No, I had a date all the time. With no problem at all. It was a lot of fun for us, and I would import my date every weekend. And I've still got my date here. It's been a long, good trip, but I agree completely about the coat and tie. I mean, it was amazing that we did that in such hot weather and lousy. I remember, do y'all remember the name Frank Quayle? But you don't remember him. He was a UVA halfback that just cleaned our clock. And it was raining and nasty, and I had on my coat and tie, and I was miserable.
You didn't have a bulge in your back pocket.
Now let's don't go there.
One other memory, you alluded earlier to Saturday classes. I recall during fall term having a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday class in Gardner. I would dress in my little heels and the whole thing, and that professor had the rule that if you missed 3 classes, you dropped a letter grade. So when the bell rang, you were bolting out the door to start getting in those lines, because otherwise you didn't get a seat.
And the bad thing about Saturday classes, especially if you were importing a day and had to go get her in Raleigh, fortunately, that was better than having to go to Greensboro. It was almost impossible. And 8 o'clock Saturday classes were no fun.
This one went until 11:30. I remember it really well.
Sal, what's it like?
Well, I'm afraid that, at least in my personal experiences, I'm going to have to disappoint and say that I also have to dress up for football games. But that's because I'm in Order of the Bell Tower, and we host the Chancellor's Box during football games. So I'm also in a coat and tie, so I understand your pain of sitting in the sand in 90 degrees or in rain wearing a coat and tie.
The Chancellor's Box is cool.
It is until they kick you out at halftime, and then you have to go back to the stands. But I do think, for the most part, students don't dress up for games anymore. It's shorts and a Carolina t-shirt. And in fact, a student stores, the day before every home game, sells a Carolina blue t-shirt with the big interlocking NC on the middle. Thankfully, you don't have to have a date to go to the games. Otherwise, my first 3 years, I just wouldn't have been able to go. And then this year, when I finally would have had a date, she doesn't know the difference between football and hockey. So,
So the dress is dramatically different. The only people that wear coats or button-ups or cute dresses are people who are in the fraternities and sororities, and they have their own section with special drinks in them as well. And then for normal students, I still remember what I wore to my first football game. I had my Carolina shirt that I bought from student stores, and something that every student or most students do is we get these little Tar Heel tattoos, and we tattoo them on the side of our face, mostly girls, because that's our way of being really cute. And what's also common, you'll go to the game in just hordes of your groups with your friends. That's the thing, not so much dates. Sometimes you have a date if you're lucky. The ratio's not so good anymore, so it's tough. But another thing that's seen is like you have to do this one time before you graduate is you have to do what they call painting up, and that's where you put body paint on. I didn't ever make it to that one. It wasn't my thing. But that's something that you'll do, and you'll stand right in the student section, and we're really rowdy and we're really loud. Everyone will get a pom-pom, and there are different songs that we sing during that time. So it's not as classy anymore.
Yes.
One of the big differences that I have seen is that women back in the day could put their bathing suits on and walk to the pool, but they had to cover up with a raincoat. And what a memory that really stands out was a lady coming back. It was in the summertime. She was probably here as a teacher doing follow-up education, but she was walking across campus with her raincoat on, but she had on a navy blue one-piece bathing suit because the raincoat was a clear plastic raincoat.
We're going to talk in a minute about what did you wear to class, but I can remember waiting around when I was working in student affairs, and it would be a snow day, and Ms. Carmichael would then have to decide if the female students didn't have to wear a dress that day to class, if they could wear jeans.
When I left in '65, I went to Kansas to graduate school, and I went to the first football game there. And I went, and there were 80,000 people in the stands, and one guy in a coat and tie.
So Suzanne and Martin, how about basketball games? Did you go? How did you get tickets? What was the process, and who was our big rival basketball-wise?
Well, I have to say that I went to all the football games. I don't believe I went to many basketball games, Dickie, I hate to say. But, gosh, I remember going down, I guess my first year was, Dean Smith came in 61, right, I was cute in 63. Basketball was just kind of recovering when we were in school, and I don't think it was a problem to get to the basketball game. You just walked in, got a ticket, went in and sat there. It wasn't a big deal like the football team at that time, and I think probably state was probably our biggest rival. Maybe Duke, say the Duke, they always say but it just wasn't, I don't remember ever, if I went to the basketball games, I don't remember worrying on Monday night what I was going to wear.
Well, I will reiterate what you said, man. It wasn't a big deal to go. The thing I remember the most, though, about Carolina basketball back then was Billie Cunningham. I'll tell you, in Woollen Gym, you walk in, you look around, you find a seat, and it was just easy to do. But Billie Cunningham was the most remarkable ball player I think I've ever seen, except for Michael. Because the guy would get the rebound, run down the court, take a shot, get the rebound if he needed to, run back, get the rebound. He did it all. I don't remember anybody else on the team except Billie Cunningham. So,
well, I'm not disputing that part, but I will say getting a ticket in Woollen Gym was different than y'all are describing.
I was going to talk about that.
Well, go ahead. If your last name began with from A to K, you got to go this game, and then if it was L through Z, then you got to go.
well, I only went to the games that I had the opportunity.
Mark, tell them what it was like.
Go ahead.
I will say, we went to a lot of games in Woollen Gym. Can you hear me? You good? And I was terrified of those wooden bleachers. They shook. I was positive those things were coming down, and I would come down with it. So that's my memory of basketball in Woollen Gym. Here.
Yeah, I was going to say what Dick did, that you went A to K and L to Z, and it might be reasonably easy, especially if we were playing Wofford or somebody, but if you were playing State Carolina or Wake Forest, you had to go on Tuesday, as I recall, and stand in line to get your ticket, and you could get a day ticket, so you could get up to 2, and it was a big deal to go to the big games. It's true that for a number of games it was just open seating and you just showed up, but there weren't many of those because it seems that we played mostly ACC teams, and they were usually pretty good rivalries, especially Duke and State. Wake to some extent, but not as much as Duke and State, and Duke was the lead.
Sal, try that for us. Tell them what it's like.
Getting basketball tickets is a hassle now. So there are some games where you can just walk in. Those are the non-conference games, but even some of those, you know, if we're in the Big Ten ACC Challenge or we're playing Kentucky, and all ACC games, there's a lottery. So you'll enter your name about a week before the game, and you will get an email, most of the time saying, unfortunately, you have not been chosen to receive tickets to this game, but occasionally, if you're lucky, you will get 2 tickets, except for Duke. You only get 1 for Duke. And then there are 3 phases. So phase 1, you go in an hour and a half before the game. These are the best seats. If you get there really early and wait in line, which, I mean, imagine you're already getting there an hour and a half before the game. If you get in line 2 hours before the game, that's your day. But if you get in line really early, you can be in the risers. So you can stand right behind the basket. Otherwise, you'll get a seat on the lower level. And then phase 2 and phase 3 are on the upper level. And I've spent a lot of time with my back to the wall of the Dean Smith Center watching games from afar. But for most games, if you're willing to wait, I think you can get in. You can go to the standby line and wait to get in that way. You can stand in the turn it back line. That's where students reject their lottery tickets, and those get redistributed. So if you want to go to every game, I think you can. It's just something that you have to devote a lot of time to.
The only thing that I'd add is, as far as if you want to sit with your friends, because of the way the lottery works, it's almost like we have this underground like trading thing that we do. And so you'll say, okay, I need a phase 1 ticket. I'll trade you my phase 2s for your phase 1, so that if you have friends that are sitting in whatever phase, you can sit with your friends. So.
Okay, so I want everybody to answer this one. Where did you go to party? How were parties organized? And did people go with dates or in groups? Mary, why don't you start? Well, I've been picking on Suzanne down there.
You know, it was different for me because I met a young man before I decided to come to Carolina. When I came for my interview, if you were a transfer student, the ladies had to come for an interview, and I came from Virginia down to Chapel Hill, met this young fellow, and you know, eventually we decided to get together, which was good, and we dated. We didn't have a car, and we didn't have any money, and we wanted to be together, so we would go to Grand Memorial to the Rendezvous Room. Do y'all remember the Rendezvous Room? Okay. The best thing about that was that it had a free jukebox. And we would dance to the Righteous Brothers. And that was a lot of our days, right? So we didn't really party. We were very interested in each other, and we wanted to spend time together. And that's pretty much what we did. Pretty much.
What does that mean? Well, Becky and I would go to my fraternity and party and dance and have a good time there. We would also go to the little fraternity court from time to time, and then go to the big fraternity court from time to time. The time that really sticks in my mind was when the Hot Nuts were here. And I had a great time dancing with the woman singer with the Hot Nuts. But also, shouldn't have told that. But I'll tell you, the thing that sticks in my mind is Jubilee Weekend. You remember that? It was phenomenal, and I went to sit on the lawn, just on the inside of the wall, right next to Sam, and I heard Les Flatt and Earl Scruggs for the first time. And then I got hooked big time. I was not a country singer aficionado at all, but that got me. My children, I've talked about it so much, my children actually gave me one of their CDs.
Have you been to the museum in Shelby?
No. I need to do that, okay?
You do.
Well, my husband, whom I was dating when I obviously was in Carolina, was in a fraternity, so we would go over to the fraternity house for parties. We would go to the little fraternity court, big fraternity court. We would go downtown, have dinner at the Rathskeller, and walk along Franklin Street. There are always things to do at Chapel Hill, and that's kind of what we did. You didn't get in the car and go anywhere. You just stayed in town.
And an addendum, we love the Hot Nuts, and we love to dance. We love to dance then, we love to dance now. And it was so deja vu when our oldest daughter came to Carolina, and she was she booked the bands for her sorority. And we were at the Harris Teeter in Carrboro with her one time, and she just let out a big squeal and ran to go hug somebody. And I thought, oh, cute boy, cute boy. It was Doug Clark. They had done a lot of business together, and she was at the Capitol Sig House one time, and Doug Clark had a heart attack, or thought he was having a heart attack, and the person he called for out of that whole group was Mary Beth Layton, so she had to go attend to him while he was having whatever it was that was wrong with him.
Range of opportunities for partying on campus depending on kind of who you are, what groups you run in. As a first year female, you're kind of drawn towards the fraternity parties. You know, there's not a lot of rules, the boys will let you in. So you do that for a while. I'd say those who aren't in fraternity parties stick to some dorm activities. There's some of that, and then once you're of age, Chapel Hill's a really big bar town. You know, He's Not Here, Top of the Hill, all those places. You can run around all over Franklin Street, run into anyone and everyone. Bars are my favorite place to go. That's the nightlife.
So I'll echo that and add a few things. I'm a residential advisor in Morrison dorm on South Campus, and so like you said, before you're 21, your options are frats, or you can go to dorm parties. And you guys would be amazed how first years and sophomores who are under 21 can fit more than 20 people in rooms that are intended for just 2. So that's an awesome option. Another thing that's big are house parties. And so again, if you're underage and you have friends that live off campus, sometimes they'll host house parties. And sometimes some of my friends will travel outside of Chapel Hill and go to Durham for different bars or clubs, and sometimes even downtown Raleigh. But again, usually we have everyone come here, so Duke students will usually find them sometimes on Franklin Street trying to figure out where the best places are to go out.
That was true 50 years ago.
Really, so they weren't fun then, they're not fun now. There's so many options. It's really about what do you feel like doing? And I don't know what days you guys went out, but in Chapel Hill, you can usually find a good group of people going out every single night. Every single night. There's what we call Tequila Tuesdays, or Country Night is on Tuesdays. Wednesday, we don't have a name for it, but people are out, trust me. Thursday, sometimes Thirsty Thursday, or Throwback Thursdays, and then Friday, Saturday. Sunday, I think we take a little bit of a break. Some karaoke, something light.
I'll just say, because my little sister who's about to start college is here in the crowd, that there's only studying, there's no parties.
I'll also mention, I know y'all said something about Jubilee. We have like a homecoming concert and that sort of thing. Our big day thing is what we call LDOC. That stands for last day of classes. So our last day of classes is just a whole day of fun. People are out on the quad, all around campus. So that's our big day.
Was LDOC like that when you guys were here?
No.
That's probably for the best.
So let's talk about how we got into the classroom. So how did you register for classes? How did you add and drop courses? And who was your best advisor when it came to what classes to take? Bill, why don't you start? How'd you register?
I registered before each semester, and I never went through drop-in. Wow. It's amazing. I was, wasn't I? I just was smart. I think that's right. As far as an advisor was concerned, there was a professor here in business, which is where I really got into it, was named Claude George. And he was a very, very nice guy, and he knew my dad. And so he would try to advise me on what I ought to do if I'm going to be in business and what courses I ought to take. And so I have to say that that guy was very influential in my career and my life.
My advisor was Dr. Annie Lee Jones from the Department of Education. I was an education major. And she had a very interesting personality, and I enjoyed working with her. I went through drop ad several times, and you stood in line behind the table, and it took forever to change anything that was on the schedule. And
You were going to Woodland Gym and
it was just a horrible way to get through it. So out there, whatever you wanted had already been filled, and so you have to exchange and do something else, which we really pretty well. But, yeah, right. But it's very different now, so thank you.
Samir, what about you, Mark?
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
You want to talk about ratio?
Oh, do I have to talk
No,
about
you
that?
don't have to. You're going to fail this course.
Can I have another question? I don't like that.
Let me tell you
I
what
have no memory
politicians
of
do.
it. What's that?
When they get a question they don't like, they answer the question they wish had been asked.
I have better questions. I have no memory of any of that. I know I must have done it. I don't think I had an advisor. You know, I was only here for 2 years in undergraduate school, and I think I just signed up and went, and that's it. I dropped one class. It was philosophy, because I could not understand a word the man said. Of that.
Well, I would just say that my advisor was worthless. I cannot remember a single advisor by name or any positive help that I ever received from the advisor. You know, what I took was what my friends said I ought to take.
That's what I was getting to about the underlying.
Yeah, plus I was in that 3-3 program, which was a very tightly prescribed program by the law school. And I had very few electives. I took exactly what was in that program. And so the only time I went through drop bad is when I didn't get a course I needed to do that 3-3 program. And what a horror show that was. You got these punch cards, and you would go and you'd have to find a course. If you were going to drop one, you had to find one to add. And it was long lines in Wool and Gym, and took forever, and was really just a horror show.
South, what's it like now? How do you register?
Well, it's still a horror show. It's just a horror show on the internet. So we have something called Connect Carolina, and imagine sort of like an Amazon.com, but for classes. So you'll go through and you'll put all the classes you want in a shopping cart. And then you'll select the ones that you hope to register for, and hope is a key term because you probably won't actually get to do that. We talk about it in terms of shapes. So green circle means you got in, yellow triangle means you're waitlisted, red X means you didn't get in. And one of the most frustrating things is to see a green circle, click register, and then all of a sudden that becomes a red X and you didn't get the class. One of the great things about having it online and having laptops in your classroom is if you're sitting in a class and the professor is talking about something and you decide that you're not interested in it, you can just sit there and click drop, like right there. And I've actually seen people sitting in front of me while the professor's talking, click drop on their button, shut their laptop back up, and walk out of class. I would definitely echo what you said, or what Mr. Lancaster said, Martin said about advising. I went to my advisor one time, and that's because I was required to by Carolina. Your first year you have to go one time. After that, the only time I went to Steel Building is earlier this semester when I had 3 exams on the same day and I had to get one due. Otherwise, I never went to see an academic advisor.
I would say the best advisor for us is our peers, so it's really common to see there's, big Carolina Facebook groups. Someone will post, I need to find a class that fits these general education requirements, that's not too hard at this time. What does anyone have to recommend? And everyone will post, I took this class from so-and-so, and they were great. And we have websites now. There's one called Rate My Professor. And so most professors have a page, and people can go on and talk about how difficult their class was, what they liked. There are professors who read them and will come in the first day and say, I know what everyone said about me online, so,
It also tells you how attractive your professor is.
Yeah.
Okay, while we're talking about professors, one last question, then we're going to take questions from the audience. Did you have a favorite professor, and why? Why was that person a favorite and effective? We'll go back this way.
I did. I have a few favorite professors, but the first professor that became my favorite, I actually had his class in this room right here. His name is Lawrence Rosenfeld, and he taught interpersonal communication studies. And he was my favorite because he took a personal interest in who I was, and I sat right there, actually, I sat right there. And from the very start, he was so excited about what he was teaching and so excited about how what he was teaching was going to change our lives in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think you find that at such a, we have phenomenal professors here, but sometimes you can feel as if your professors don't know you or they're not necessarily concerned with who you are or how what their teaching relates to you. And so it was just a really, really great way to start my Carolina experience with a phenomenal professor.
My favorite professor actually is also a professor at Duke University. My minor, like I said, it's called Politics, Philosophy, and Economics, and it's a joint program with Duke. And so you study how those kind of three topics work together, and you take some core classes. And so I had both my gateway and capstone with him, and was lucky enough to participate in a reading group with him outside of class. We actually just read a philosophy book and met and had dinner once a week this whole semester. And he was just, he's pretty young, was really passionate about the subject, loved to hear what students were doing outside of school, really cared about, our well-being, our learning, and so he was my favorite. Oh, his name was Jonathan Anomaly.
My favorite professor's name is Andrea Benjamin, and the reason she's my favorite professor is when I came here, I didn't expect any professors to be interested in getting to know you or have a personal relationship with you, and Dr. Benjamin is very interested in having a personal relationship with all of her students. But I was fortunate as well in that Carolina actually does set up first years to have an opportunity to get to know a professor, so I met Dr. Benjamin in what's called a first year seminar. These are classes on very specific, unique topics. Mine was race, politics, and film. And they are capped at 24 students. So it's a way for students, first-year students, to kind of get out of the typical 300-person general education classes, be in a very discussion-based class, and really get to know the professor well. And actually, Dr. Benjamin emailed all of her students who were about to graduate, including me, and took us all to dinner just a couple weeks ago. So she has been sort of one of my mentors on campus.
Well, when that question was asked for the 1995 YAC that has just come out, I knew that everybody would choose Dr. Boyd. And of course he was fabulous. But I decided not to choose him because I knew everybody else would. And my second favorite was another religion professor, Sam Hill. And Sam was a great guy and was taught courses that I was very interested in. And he also took a special interest in his students. And his classes were small for some reason. And that was important too, because a lot of my classes were in this size room or bigger.
Did anybody have Dr. Bill Goodykins for English? All right. So do you remember how he would come in with stacks of handouts and drop them all?
I still have them.
Okay. This is the great thing about Dr. Goodykins. He taught a class in 20th century drama and fiction. David took the course too. I made an A, but
What did David make?
he probably made a B+. I'm sure he did. But the thing is, Dr. Goodykins had just been fired from Davidson for being a communist. That's what they said. So naturally he came to Chapel Hill. I had no idea when I was in that class that I would eventually be a teacher. That's another story. I was never going to teach anybody anything. But I loved that class, and I kept all those handouts. I mean, he poured to the artist as a young man. How can anybody make that fun except for Dr. Goodykins? That was just wonderful. So when I became an AP English 12 teacher in Gastonia, I had those notes and, unashamedly used them for, I taught everything he taught us, and it was wonderful.
Are you a communist?
No, I'm a Presbyterian. he was a magical teacher. You know, I think it was a 90-minute class or 85-minute class, and in the truth, you know, he started talking, and I was just on the edge of my chair, which was most unusual. So I really, really appreciated him more and more as the years went on.
And the older Baddour brother was in the same class with him.
What did he know?
He sort of sat there with sort of deer in the headlights.
Well, I agree with Martin. I like Sam Bill a lot. I thought he was a great teacher. Couldn't get Bernie Boyd, and would have tried to. I actually tried to, but couldn't get him. I had a professor that I got after I took I guess in this day and time I should say a crit course. So I took a crit course under a guy named Giveaway Guy Johnson. And I was bored out of my mind. So I said, okay, I'm going to take what I really need to get and would like to get. And so I chose calculus. Tuesday, I know this is really stupid. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 8 o'clock. First exam, F. Second exam, didn't get there. Another F. Third exam, D. Well, you know, Dr. Linker, I don't know whether everybody remember him. Oh, yes. Yeah, he was terrific. And I went up to him at the end of that class, and I said, before exams, I said, look, I think I can do okay in this class, but Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, really tough. I said, if I work hard for the next 2 weeks, will you take a hard look at what I do, and would you help me out? He said, well, if you come and do well, I'll do something. Well, I went home and told my parents that I was probably going to flunk the course. Studied for 2 weeks. The man helped me just about every other day of each week. I took his final exam, made 100, and he gave me a B in the course. I love that man. My parents did too. Bob has a question.
Yeah, the only thing that he really counted was the final exam. And when you would take, did he say if you've got the question, what he would do is he would say, okay, you're going to have a problem with one on page whatever, and then you're going to have one like this, and there were 15 of them. And the final exam was there are 15 problems on the exam. Work all 15 problems the best you can, and then select the best 12 from each grade. The downside of that was maybe it was Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday classes. It seems to me I took every one of those classes at least twice. And then finally, when it came to differential equations, I looked through my little book and I thought I had 15 problems. And I sat down and worked. I didn't really work, but I was able to figure out how to do the 15 problems. And lo and behold, there were the problems.
The only reason he got 100 was because he gave him the question.
No, it's not.
Let's find out from the Suzanne.
The thing is, most people didn't know it.
My favorite professor at UNC was Dr. Dick Baddour in North Carolina history. I loved his presentations. I loved everything about his class. He never seemed to get ruffled by anything. I remember dogs walking in, walking right past him, sitting on the floor, and I just thought his course was great. I learned an awful lot about North Carolina, and I would have to say he was just my favorite.
I think we got time for one question.
I don't have a question. I want to make an observation that the men in the room would not like to own up to. In the day, you had the notice about transferring, and the ratio of males to females on campus. Usually around Tuesday or Wednesday, this was usually a dorm phenomenon, there would appear on bulletin boards signs that would say, horny, call so-and-so, share gas, going to Greensboro. And you'd pull the number off and you'd call and you'd ride up to Greensboro. You'd walk into a dorm and call up to the 3rd floor and say, anybody want to go to the Joker's Wild? Joker's Free or whatever it's called.
You wouldn't say anybody up there horny.
We left that off. And that's how a lot of us that certainly were in the dorms that weren't in the fraternity sorority would have something of a social life. And if you didn't have a ride back, you just stand at the dorm and say, going back to Chapel Hill, going back to Chapel Hill, and get a ride back.
Wonderful morning. I know you've got a lot. Let me thank you that she's the one that arranged it all.